Hello everybody, today's video is about my favourite film of all times, Earth to Echo. It's about three lifelong preteen friends that recently discovered that their hometown would soon be destroyed in order to build a highway. This would mean that all three of them would be torn apart and unable to hang out together. The three main characters consist of Munch, Alex, and Tuck. One of the three friends, Tuck, is a filmmaker slash YouTuber. And wow, you would sure think someone like that would deserve millions of subscribers, and that's interesting. Tuck and his two other friends had been making short little videos together for years, and when Tuck found out that they would be forced to move, he really poured his heart and soul into his videos. Anything to potentially hold back the demolition, he would do. He made many videos in protest, but it was no use. But in the middle of this, some extremely odd things happened. For some reason, all of their phones had produced some weird images at exactly the same time. They couldn't turn it off, and they couldn't go off of it. They later discovered that it was some kind of map that was designed to be followed. They ended up agreeing that the best way to end their two last days together would be to follow the map. They didn't know what they would find, but they wanted something that they could remember their last moments together by. Now before we go analyze this movie, I thought I'd like to mention a few things. For starters, this is an extremely underrated movie. Most of the places I've looked only gave the film 3 out of 5 stars, and it looks like it only got about 51% on the Rotten Tomatoes. I personally don't know why the film wasn't perceived that well by the critics. I went to see this thing in the cinemas when I was about 9 or 10, and since that day it was my favourite movie ever. I watch this film a few times a year, and I've never once thought, meh. No other movie has made me feel as sad, excited, or as nostalgic as this one. Part of the reason I love it so much is because I'll always hold a nostalgic connection to making my own films when I was extremely young. And while I can't say I've ever experienced being yanked away from my best friends, most people probably can understand why this would be sad. Of course, you could promise each other you would still stay in touch, it would just be extremely difficult to not just move on. On an artistic note, every single shot in this film is made to look like it's being filmed by one of the three kids, adding an extra layer of personality and honesty to the film. Whether it's an action camera mounted to a bike or a handheld camcorder, the entire film was his own work. At the beginning of the film, it was announced that this was a Tuck Sims film. The entire film was made to look like a homemade documentary, and they succeeded in every way possible. You could tell that Tuck, while he didn't outwardly show it, was an incredibly talented documentarian. With his incredible editing and smooth voiceover, he had crafted the footage into a masterpiece. And yeah, just a quick disclaimer, this film wasn't really made by a preteen, it was made by a major production company, but it was made to look like it was made by a preteen, and it succeeded. So it's pretty good. But that'll be all for the introduction. Let's actually get into this absolute masterpiece of a film. The first thing we see in the film is one of the characters, Munch, sitting down and being interviewed for a video by Tuck. Right off the bat, we can see that Munch is the formal one. He takes things quite seriously, and we can tell right away that he's a rational thinker. This doesn't mean that he isn't a funny, quirky character though. He starts off his interview in a happy/cheery mood, but as he describes the sadness and emotional troubles of leaving his hometown, it looks like he's realizing then and there what it's really going to be like. It's as if he's saying it out loud for the first time, and it made him realize how unhappy things really are for him. He speaks about how difficult he is to become good friends with, and he doesn't think anyone in his new school put the effort in. Then Tuck interviews Alex. Out of the three, Alex is the most camera shy. His interview is short for this very reason, but him just ignoring the camera for 10 seconds tells us a surprising amount about him. He's clearly not happy with the way things are going, but he tries to act his best like he doesn't care. This shows that he might not be scared of the camera. It could potentially be that he's scared to show that he's vulnerable to tough situations, and he tries to hide behind his wall of not caring. Lastly, Tuck takes some time to describe his own feelings. Out of all the characters in the film, Tuck is the least camera shy, meaning he's not holding back what he really thinks. Instead of talking about how sad he is, he tells us about the frustrations of not being able to stop it. This gives the audience a whole new perspective. Instead of hearing what the situation is like, we get to hear what it's like not to be able to do anything about it. I think interviewing all of the characters is a genius way of getting to know them. Traditionally, non-comedy films can't do this because it would be breaking the fourth wall, but in a YouTube documentary film, the fourth wall is all there is. because you're not pretending like it doesn't exist. All throughout the film, Tuck is narrating over the montages and other certain scenes. This isn't him breaking the fourth wall, it's him acknowledging the fourth wall. In summary, a fourth wall break is usually meant to be a small segment of a scene where a character talks to the audience, but in this film it's constant because he's hand making it for the audience. When Tuck is speaking to the camera, he gets a phone call mid-video. The phone call is from one of his friends telling him that his phone had frozen on a strange image.
Whoa, man, slow down.
Using a phone that didn't break, Munch called Alex's home phone, telling Alex and Tuck to meet him in their garden. This shows us how close all three of them were, and how effortless it was to spend time together. It gives more depth to what it would be like without each other, further engraving their motive to prevent the demolition. As it turns out, Munch is extremely tech savvy, and he managed to supply the squad with working mobile telephones. But it turns out that it's not the phones themselves causing the problem, it's some kind of interceptor in Alex's garden. Later in the day, Munch tells Alex and Tuck via text that the image on the phones displayed was an area laid out on a map format. But not a minute after receiving this text, Tuck gets a knock at his door from someone who looks to be a construction worker.
These dudes.
Hi. Is that on?
I don't know. Maybe.
Huh. We had an electrical short over at the site, and it may be disrupting people's phone service, and we're wondering if that happened to anybody in this house.
Oh no, my phone is good.
Because we're offering new phone vouchers in exchange for any device in this area here that may be displaying
That's
faulty
weird, that's
messages
weird. I
or
don't know.
images.
See ya.
No.
He said there had been a local cell phone interference, and any phones that were acting strange were to be handed into him in exchange for a new one. So we know right away that the person at the door was working for an organization that really didn't want people seeing this map. So they agreed that on their last night together, they would travel 17.6 miles on bicycle just to see if they can figure out what's going on. With spy glasses, an action camera, and a camcorder, they set out into the desert to look for potentially nothing. In order to get to this stage, they told their parents they were simply going to have a sleepover at one of the other friends' houses. This actually made for some pretty good character building, because we got to see how easy each character found it to lie to their parents. For Munch and Alex, their parents didn't really mind that they were having a sleepover, but Munch nearly cracked under pressure. For Tuck, however, it was extremely easy. His parents seemed to not care what he did at all. In fact, they didn't even listen to what he had to say. After realizing they didn't care, he actually told them the truth about what he was doing to see if they actually cared, but as it turned out, they didn't.
Alright, Ma. I'm leaving. Spending the night at Alex's house so we can play a new video game.
Have whatever you want, honey.
We're going to stay?
You gotta
We're going to
put it
stay.
down so we can go to state.
You know what? I lied actually. We're gonna ride our bikes out into the desert at night, alone, without supervision.
Right? Same hand.
We got this. We're gonna
Rest
stay.
of the way.
Okay, see you then, sweetie.
Also
We
rob
can
a
go
bank,
all the way.
go to Mexico,
State. We can
maybe even start a new life.
Right. I know.
do wrestling.
During the awesome nighttime cycling montage, we get to see a cool Google Maps satellite view of the path they're taking. Usually this would look forced, but they're using some kind of night theme setting or something, so it works with the context of the setting of the film. And so far this is the only film I've seen that uses Google Maps in a cinematic context successfully. When they get to the end of the map, they find a strange object that makes weird beep noises and stuff. At first they thought it was a bomb, so naturally Tuck starts attacking it.
He saw me. Are you crazy? It's a bomb. That's what you're supposed to do.
Then they find that when Alex tells the strange object to beep, it beeps.
About beep.
After about the 7th time Alex tells it to beep, it does a slightly bigger beep.
Beep.
After the slightly bigger beep, all of their phones produce a new map. Apart from Alex's, his phone just got stuck on camera mode. After following the second map, they end up in a barn. When they get inside the barn, the object starts making a few slightly bigger beeps, and then it starts using its mysterious object powers to steal mechanical parts from tractors and stuff.
What's going on? What was that? Is it over?
Once the strange object obtains new pieces, the map on their phones changes again. They worked out the object was trying to find pieces to build something, and the maps led to wherever those pieces may be. They also find out that the object can understand English.
Are you a dude?
Wait.
You understood us.
Munch, you have to check this out. This is amazing.
Is it? Is it amazing? Because I think it's scary as balls.
And they work out a 1 beep for yes, 2 beeps for no arrangement. After asking it loads of questions, they find out the parts that it needs is to build a spaceship, which is kind of cool. The next map took them to a pawn shop.
What was that?
F sharp?
After that, we got to see just how cute the little guy is. They also decided to name him Echo, but I was also a big fan of Tuck's idea to call it
Master Blaster.
He doesn't blast anything.
Then they followed yet another map, and this one took us to someone's actual home, so it would be breaking and entering to go any further. This is where they all decided to just call it quits and go home. Kidding, I'm just kidding. That would be a huge plot letdown. Oh, and I thought I should mention this. A while back in the film, Tuck claims to have had smoochy smooch time with a girl from his school. This detail comes up later.
Wait, mannequin girl?
Yeah.
Was she good at it?
B minus.
Damn, Tuck, my man. Tuck and the boys sneak into the house and manage to make their way up the stairs without getting caught. But then they got caught. But they were caught by none other than the person Tuck claims to have had a thing with, but apparently he didn't.
Were you guys kissed?
Wait, what?
Luckily, they were caught right after Echo had done his thing. Then the girl was all, yo, let me come with y'all. And then Alex was like, nah, you ain't ballin' enough to fly with the squad. And in the girl's defense, it was pretty rude of him to break into her home and then insist that she was in the wrong. Then they were like, nah bro, we outta here, let's roll out. Their next stop is a bar, but before they could go inside, Munch said these inspiring words.
I really need to get the pee out of my body.
Then the girl from before actually shows up, and I guess they were okay with it the second time around. Anyway, they got into the bar, and then Echo did his thing, and then they got kicked out. Then they end up at an arcade, Echo does his usual thing, but this time a security guard stops Alex, but instead of going to help him, Munch and Tuck stay behind for their own benefit. Fortunately, the girl manages to get Echo to distract the guard and get him out safely. However, Alex feels betrayed that his two best friends didn't try to help him. In this part, we get to see how they act in the context of conflict. This is interesting because it gives us a whole new perspective on the characters. After talking it out in some restaurant, they get on good terms again. But just as things were getting back to normal, the construction dude from earlier came up to the table and he was all, "Gimme that bag." And they were like, "No." So he ended up just taking it and putting it in his van and then driving off with it. And now since Munch is the brave fella that he is, he hopped into the back of one of the construction vehicles, so now he was being taken to their secret headquarters.
Oh my. Munch!
Obviously the rest of the squad couldn't keep up with the vehicles on bikes, so Tuck was like, "Yo, my brother's at a party. We should go steal his car." Then they all went to the party, got the car, and then drove to their hometown where the construction site is. Oh yeah, and if you're wondering how Tuck knows how to drive, he just googled it. So then they get to the construction site and they're ready to save Munch and Echo, but their attempt to save Munch unfortunately failed, seeing as they were caught and thrown in a van. The van was headed for an old metal dump in which they were going to destroy Echo, but little did they know, Echo obtains parts that make him stronger. In a metal dump, you'll probably find some of those parts. After Echo gathered all the pieces he needed, the squad picked him up and stole one of the construction vans. In the middle of all this, a new map appeared on their phones telling them to go to Alex's garden, which happens to be the same place all the phones went funny. When they got to Alex's garden, Echo led them underneath his garden, where they found a room in which there was an object just the right size to hold Echo. When they placed Echo inside of it, they said one last goodbye to Echo. It's interesting that Alex wouldn't open up to his feelings before, but now he's saying goodbye to a friend. The strong emotions that he's feeling might have turned him into a more emotional person. I don't know, maybe, who knows. As soon as they leave the cool underground room, spaceship parts start flying out from underground, developing into a huge spaceship in the sky. Then their journey is over and they all split up. And in case you were wondering, yes, they still remain best friends. Or at least that's what I picked up from the shot of them looking older and being best friends. And that, my friends, was Earth to Echo. Definitely the biggest reason for being my favourite film is how well it persuades you to feel a certain way. Not every film can do that. Every time I watch this film, I get the same feeling of being excited and nervous for what's about to happen. And that's another reason too. The film is so rewatchable. It carries the storyline so well, it doesn't matter how many times you've seen it, because it's 100% in the moment. I could be watching this at a funeral and forget completely where I am. It's insane. I'd say it's just as much an experience as it is a film. So in summary, go watch this incredible film if you haven't already. Oh, and one last thing. This film was my first encounter with the music of One Republic, and I'm like a really big fan of them now, so yeah, that's cool. But yeah, thanks for watching. I really hope you liked this video, and I really hope you watch Earth to Echo, and I also really hope you leave a comment if you have any other films you'd like to see me talk about. And I also really hope that you have a nice day.